what is that couple of outdated tactics or things you think today marketers or teams, or for that matter, you are still holding on to, and perhaps should give up or planning to give, or planning to give up?
That I'm really sort of trying to avoid even using the word, let alone the marketing kind of strategy and theory of funnels. If you think of marketing now as a funnel, you're kind of alienating yourself and you're almost like siloing yourself down into using specific types of content at the thing, and moving more towards this idea of allowing people to discover the content that resonates best with them at any stage of their cycle is probably the best way to do it.
Today on Marketing Growth Fuel, we're joined by Lee Noble, Head of Digital at Peak, a UiPath company. With over a decade of experience across SaaS, agency, and in-house roles, Lee has driven growth through AI, automation, and data-driven marketing. At Peak, he's delivered millions in inbound pipeline, built AI-powered SDR systems, and scaled global paid ad strategies that blend creativity with analytics. Known for pushing the boundaries of digital strategy, Lee brings a unique perspective on how enterprises can balance human expertise with AI innovation to shape the future of marketing. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Marketing Growth Fuel, the podcast where we go beyond funnels, frameworks to uncover people, processes, and the possibilities that power modern marketing. Lee, it's great to have you on the show. How you been doing?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, you've caught us on a particularly hot day here in Manchester, so it's a warm one, which we're not quite used to. You see, in the northwest of England. So we're struggling a little bit, but we're getting there.
Nice. I should have started with Manchester first because I studied there in the University of Manchester. This is something
Nice.
that I'm going to do later because yesterday I spoke to someone who was from London. But great. All right. So, Lee, let's kick things off by cutting through the hype, right? So, AI and automation have been shiny objects in marketing for a while. But what's actually working and what's just noise, or what's that one misconception that people still hold about AI and automation in 2025?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right, they are kind of like these shiny new tools that people are trying to jump on really quickly and really sort of try to take advantage of. And they try and see these things as something that's going to change your life kind of thing. And I guess that the main misconception with a lot of it is that you have to kind of grab hold of everything and use everything at once and sort of decide, oh my God, we need to use AI, we need to use agents, we need to throw automation in there. But actually, is that really what you need to do? And the misconception is that you need to take all of that head on and up front, where really you should be looking at what processes you've currently got and what problems can you currently solve using AI and automation. So a really good example of that at Peak and UiPath, we have been looking at things like how do we improve our conversion rates for leads, for example. So we want to improve our MQL to SQL conversion rate. So actually, from a marketing perspective and a digital marketing perspective, what is it within that marketing can help to influence? Because it's much to do with sales. It's quite a sales process converting leads, but we can still be influential in that. So we're actually building tools using AI and automation that will help to automatically research leads and automatically outbound outreach to those leads and stuff like that as well, to help speed that process up a little bit.
Right.
So ultimately, I think that the misconception is you kind of have to grab everything all at once, when really you need to understand what processes you've currently got, and then how does AI and automation fit within those.
Got it. And do you think traditional demand gen and performance metrics are still the North Star, or do you think there are new measures that are now being evaluated, to drive growth?
Yeah, it's really interesting, that discussion, because for a long time, we kind of pore over metrics around, say, cost per lead and click-through rate and all those kinds of things. And you ultimately start to look at, attribution has been a key issue, and attribution has been a key issue for a long time across digital marketing. Like, do you look at first touch? Do you look at last touch? Do you look at multi-touch? All these kinds of things. And ultimately, what I try and understand best in my role, and how I've kind of developed this thinking over the last few years, is not just from a digital marketing perspective, as that feels quite siloed now in terms of, oh, well, we're generating this many leads and this many convert to MQLs and this much cost per lead and all this kind of stuff. What does that really actually mean in a wider business and go-to-market team context? Now, actually, what we're looking to do is understand not just where leads are acquired and how they come into the business, but what is the acquisition process like from that point onwards, and how do we understand in terms of actual pipeline generated and the figures around pipeline, how much of that has been influenced by marketing. The classic anecdote for this kind of stuff is obviously when you have a lead and you can see that they found out your website through a Google search ad, for example, and then they download a piece of content, and then they find you on LinkedIn, and they click through on your website, and then they read all these blogs, and then you can see all this journey happening. But then the salesperson converts them to an opportunity because they may have spoken to them once at an event. And we are kind of like, well, that's a sales opportunity. It's a sales lead. And we're like, hang on a minute. There's all this evidence to say otherwise.
Right.
The converse happens as well. Like, we'll have a sales guy that speaks to somebody on LinkedIn, and then they meet them at an event, and then they invite them to, I don't know, a round table or something. And then they fill a form in on the website, and we say, oh, it's a marketing lead. Now, that's the problem with attribution. So what we're trying to look at is actually what stages of that process have been influenced by marketing, and can we start to look at things like marketing influence pipeline or co-generated leads and those kinds of things. And we're working with UiPath, who recently acquired us, on those particular types of metrics now that are almost like a next generation step of metrics to look at, because what we feel like is that we want to look at where marketing is influential, not just the be all and end all or the start or the beginning of a conversation.
I think what we've been able to do up until this point is, set the record straight on what's real, what's the hype, what are some of the new metrics that are coming out. And now that we understand this current reality, I'd love to kind of zoom in on how work gets done, because AI isn't just a tool anymore, or it's not just one of those tools in a stack anymore. It's reshaping the entire marketing workflows. It's not only changing the outputs, but in my opinion, it's also transforming the ways teams are thinking, planning, and executing right from day one. So, in your opinion, how do you think AI has reshaped marketing workflows in enterprise settings?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that if you're focusing on what ChatGPT can do for you as a marketer in terms of generating some content and stuff like that, you're essentially doing it wrong. I think that what you need to understand is how generative AI in particular, but AI across a workflow and built into tools across a workflow and any automations like using Zapier or things like that, is what micro decisions can almost the generative AI be doing for you in those steps, because it's not as rudimental anymore as just saying, oh, I need this email proofread, or I need this copy document writing, or I need to change the tone of this blog post or something like that. You paste it into ChatGPT and it spits out the answer for you, and that's it, done. That's very sort of like almost like entry level thinking now, I think, when it comes to using AI across marketing. Now, to kind of answer your question, I guess, in a bit more detail, what we do is we're looking now actually, where does a human need to help make decisions across a process? And where can AI actually take out some of that decision making from a human? Because you kind of consider, I don't know, maybe like the bottom 20% of tasks that need to be done for a marketer probably take 50 to 60% of a marketer's time. They're not as important as the top level of things that you need to actually do. So how do you actually then replace that bottom 20% of stuff by utilizing a mixture of AI decision making, this move into agentic ways of doing things, and how does automation fit into some of that as well? A good example of this is something I implemented just this week, actually, in that I've produced a new report for the GTM team. And what this does is it automatically pastes into just a Google Sheet the last week's worth of metrics for certain pages on our website.
Nice.
So it's verticalized based on, because we target largely retailers and manufacturers, and we have like our software fits into those two verticals perfectly. So inventory AI for manufacturers, pricing AI for retailers. So we have a load of pricing pages on our website, and that automatically pastes in the price, all the pricing pages and their modules and the traffic to them, where the traffic's come from, et cetera, et cetera. The issue with that is that I know what all those metrics mean as a digital marketer,
Yeah.
but that's not necessarily to say that somebody within the GTM team does know exactly what all of those mean. So there's now a generative AI step in the spreadsheet itself that can read the table and produce an analysis summary of that. And that's really helpful because, one, it means I don't have to kind of sit there and write out what all the metrics mean, because I know what they mean, obviously, looking at them. But then it'll take me maybe 20 minutes to look through it all and write it down, stuff like that. And that's twice, because there's twice in one spreadsheet. Whereas this just does it for me now, and I do that once a week. So that's 40 minutes a week easily saved just by one small implementation of an AI step within a decision-making and an analysis process that's really helped me this week. So yeah, I hope that's answered your question anyway.
Yeah, it does. It does. What are some of the functions in marketing you think have been permanently transformed by AI, and which still demand deep human touch? So what are those two functions?
Yeah, good question. I think analysis and analytics is kind of one of those, because as I just sort of described there, you can kind of automate the initial analysis of information.
Right.
The same with like copywriting and things like that. And what you'll see is people using generative AI specifically to help with editing, to help with ideation, creating sort of templates and that kind of thing. But what I will say is that I think that this has not necessarily permanently changed these functions, but I think it's permanently enhanced these functions. Because what I think that a lot of people worry about and feel is that AI is going to take people's jobs and generative AI is going to sort of like replace people and all that kind of thing. And I actually quite vastly disagree with that. I think that just like when we had double-ended bookkeeping with like people actually writing things down in the old spreadsheets, their lives were completely changed with the introduction of Excel, and Excel became a tool that is now fundamental to, well, almost every industry, but in this instance, financial industries. AI and generative AI is going to have that same effect. And so I don't see it as necessarily 100% changing certain functions across marketing or GTM teams more widely. I think it's actually a permanent enhancer of those. And what you'll see is actually, when it comes down to things like copywriting and analysis, it's where you're then spreading or enhancing the majority of your time on those things. The human in the loop part of those functions that will change is the strategic decision making based on what the outputs of those particular systems or AI or automations are. And that's where you'll actually see more value in human interaction, because they're the people that are making the decisions and they're the people that are actually strategizing. Whereas what all LLMs are doing is reading something and giving a summary of it. And that's when you take that forward. So yeah, I think it's enhancing departments across marketing rather than just changing them wholesale.
So Lee, now that we've kind of unpacked how AI is rewiring marketing from inside out, the real challenge, I believe, is also not just using AI today. It's also making sure that our strategies as marketers are actually relevant for tomorrow. So I'd love to kind of get into that. I think today staying relevant actually means, being ahead of time, not just reacting to what's trending. And I'd love to understand, what does it take to build a future-ready marketing strategy for AI-first enterprises?
Yeah, great question. I think getting ahead at the moment, you will have seen, and people will have seen, a lot to do with AI, SEO, and things like that. Like, how are LLMs interpreting and interacting with the content that we're putting out there based on our website or our social media and things like that. And then what metrics can we start to look at that will help us to measure that kind of stuff? We're in a very, very early stage of that kind of thing. And something I'm trying to build myself for both Peak and UiPath is actually a tool that will take our keywords, send them to LLMs and analyze the responses and things like that, so we can start to understand, like, are we appearing in these responses, and are we appearing favorably as well? Like, what's the sentiment analysis of these things? So that's, I think, a really key one, like how are LLMs positioning our businesses? The other one is largely based around how are we understanding the data that we already have, and is the data in the best possible kind of state it can be in order to utilize AI in the best possible way? So as an example of that, and this is wider than just marketing and digital, is that at Peak, we obviously produce predictive AI, and that helps businesses make decision making across pricing decisions, markdown and promotions, or inventory management, stock control, promotional planning and production planning, that kind of thing. But we can only do that if the data that you have in those systems is good data, because the AI and the analytics and the automation can only be as good as the data that's going into it in the first place. So to get ahead of time, like, you really need to start. And we've been saying this for probably 20 years, like, make sure your data is good data, because if it's not, then you're going to get the wrong analysis, the wrong outcomes, and the wrong predictions and decisions at the opposite end. So getting ahead of it in that sense and make sure your data is as good as it can be is really, really important, because that doesn't take anything to do with AI and automation. That's just something we should be doing as a best practice anyway.
Correct.
I think as a third point, the other thing we can be doing to get ahead, and this might sound like quite simple, but knowing how to prompt, I think, is really important, because I think that there is an art to it, and there are a lot of job titles in certain places out there already for, like, prompt engineers and stuff like that, that I've seen anyway. And we kind of at Peak internally, it's really cool. So we have this like Gen AI Learning Circle Slack channel where we constantly are posting things and talking to each other about, like, this is a really cool way of using this Gen AI tool. Or there was a post this morning for one of my colleagues talking about, are there any agentic use cases that people are using outside of work in their own personal lives? And one guy has created this this automation that checks the weather every morning and then decides on what outfit he should wear for the day based on the clothes that he has in his wardrobe and stuff like that. And it can tell him, like, it's going to be this warm, or it's going to be windy, or it might rain, so wear this, blah, 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 all these kinds of things. And to do all of that really well is really based around the prompts that you're putting into these LLMs. And the better you get at doing that, the more sort of advancement you get, and the more analysis you get, and the better results that you get out of doing things. So yeah, that's probably my top three things I guess you could be doing now to help get ahead and stay relevant in the future.
And Lee, if you don't mind me asking, how do you personally decide which emerging trend to actually invest in? Because as a marketer, I think every month, every week, there's a new trend that's out there, and there's an expectation from the business that, oh, we need to get on this trend, or maybe there's that peer pressure, or it just could be the market pressure around you. Why aren't we doing this? How do you decide that?
Yeah, great question. And you're right. Like, there's a lot of stuff out there. You only have to search LinkedIn for 5 minutes and you're coming across people that are kind of like really drilled down into a topic that you barely even thought about yet. And you start panicking, like, oh my God, should I be doing that right now, kind of thing. But ultimately, what we do, or what I do personally, is I'm focused on, and this sounds pretty boring when you put it down, but what are our go-to-market objectives? Like, if it's something that's working for us already, or if it's something that we're trying to build towards, or if we have specific, like, for example, at the minute, we're focusing on running campaigns targeting our Markdown AI software that helps retailers with Markdown decision-making. That is the campaign that we're going after because it helps to drive the GTM team in a specific vertical for selling a specific piece of our software within a certain demographic and ICP. So that focuses my mind on, actually, I need to then develop campaigns and position our content and go for demand and lead generation aspects within that particular vertical, because that's where their decision making sits. Within that, is there anything that we aren't currently doing that will help to enhance all of that particular digital strategy that I want to work on? But it all ultimately has to align to a business goal, because, and again, it sounds pretty boring, like I should be sitting here saying, oh, just try everything all at once. But ultimately, what I try to focus on is how are we all pulling in the same direction? And I mentioned as a GTM team specifically, because I think it feels to me like it's gone are the days where we're marketing separately and we're sales separately and we're account management separately. Like we don't feel like that at Peak. We are one larger go-to-market team that has a load of specialists within that, and that's the best way to be. It's the best team I've ever worked with, because we all know what each other are working on and we're all focusing the same sort of goal at the end of the quarter or the end of the financial year. And that means that I'm then aligned to what they want to do. And therefore, that helps me decide on what it is that we should be focusing on in terms of new technologies, new techniques, that kind of thing.
And having talked about it, I think the next question then I would have for you is, what is that couple of outdated tactics or things you think today marketers or teams, or for that matter, you are still holding on to, and perhaps should give up or planning to give up?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was having a conversation about this yesterday with a colleague over at UiPath, and anyone that knows me kind of professionally or within work and stuff knows that I'm really sort of trying to avoid even using the word, let alone the marketing kind of strategy and theory of funnels. I hate the idea of channeling content and strategy and marketing in this old hat way of thinking around funnels, because if you think of marketing now as a funnel, you're kind of alienating yourself and you're almost like siloing yourself down into using specific types of content, specific types of buyer behavior cycle that you are imagining is there, which is never usually the case anymore. With the emergence of things like AI and stuff like that, and content that is being delivered by generative AI, or the lengthening of buyer behavior cycles as more competition comes into a market, decision-making processes are just not this linear cycle anymore. So, and this sounds incredibly sci-fi and future tech, but actually a lot of my thinking around this came from, I'm obsessed with like physics and space and things like that. And I watched Interstellar again for about the 100th time. And the idea of the Tesseract at the end of the film, it's been out for 10 years now, so spoiler alert, I'm not bothered about. So if you've not seen it by now, you should have. The idea of this Tesseract and this idea that the fourth dimension is time, that you can manipulate, or he can see within that one area or that one element of being within the Tesseract and seeing what's going on at all points in time at once. That's kind of how I think about marketing content now, and that sounds really sort of strange, but actually what I'm thinking of is that and in practice, what we do is we display what would typically be categorized as awareness content to people in the end point of an opportunity cycle, because what we're thinking is, well, actually, there are probably loads of decision makers and people that sign off contracts and stuff like that that are first being introduced to Peak as a company right at the end of a contract negotiation phase. So actually, they probably do need to be introduced to us, and their trust needs to be built around our company and the thought leadership and the people that are working on those deals. So, and we would never have thought about that really maybe 10 years ago, because people think you show videos to awareness people, and when you get down to interest and consideration and all those different bits, you show price lists or you show case studies, and then you get down to the bottom bit, you ask someone if they want a demo. Like, what if somebody at the awareness cycle wants a demo? Do you know what I mean? It's so trying to get away from this idea of a funnel is my absolute key thing, and moving more towards this idea of allowing people to discover the content that resonates best with them at any stage of their cycle is probably the best way to do it.
I've been kind of thinking about this a lot myself. I think the way marketers have looked at the traditional process of maybe somebody buying a product, and how actually people are buying product has changed so much in this digital age. And I wouldn't say digital age, but it's just changed because of how we are now interacting and going to different forums and portals and getting this piece of information. I think the traditional model really just says that I send you an email, you clicked on it, shiny white paper for you. You click on it, here's a person, I captured his detail, he's ready to buy the product. But I don't think that's what's happening, right? I think today, you're going to go and ask a colleague for a reference, saying, I've been trying to do. You might go to a Slack channel, you might go to a Reddit forum, you might go to a digital publisher like TechDogs to get information. You might come across an Instagram reel, you might come across a LinkedIn post, you might read comments on a LinkedIn post. You might go to a forum which is very specific to your trade. And I just feel that if these nuances are going to be not considered while understanding a user journey, then I think we've not understood the buying process in itself.
Yeah, completely
And
agree.
that's why I feel that funnels, in the larger context, I do feel that funnels still stay more or less the same. It's just that the journeys are evolving a lot more, and we ought to be able to figure out if it makes sense to apply those to specific things that we're doing in terms of a strategy or a campaign that we're building out. And I think you hit the nail, you hit the home there when you said that, what if a person at the brand awareness level wants a demo? Instead of, we always consider demos and, maybe appointments at the bottom of the funnel, high value. But what if I just want to start with a demo? I don't even want to read a content. I just want to get on a call and understand what your product is.
Yeah.
And
Do you know
then
what?
maybe
Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, do you know, I've thought about this a lot. It feels like as marketers, we have this psychological disconnect in our mind with marketer version of me that knows the theory and the best practices and the ways of doing things, and then the consumer version of me. And both exist, both by B2C and B2B softwares or services and goods. So you often, or marketers often think, right, so we have this linear way of doing things in the marketing world over here, this part of my brain, and that works in this particular way, and that's the way we've always done it, kind of thing. And then in the other side of me, I'm like looking at, oh, this thing's not working for us. So actually what we probably need is an automation to send emails or something like that. And I found this, I saw this guy talking about this on LinkedIn the other day. So what I'm actually going to do is go on their website and watch a demo or something. And it's almost like those two parts of your mind never meet. Whereas
right. No,
probably
true.
encourage people to put yourself in the shoes of the people that are buying things, because
exactly.
you are one of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I always think about that.
Obviously, we've kind of tackled serious strategy questions up till now. A great conversation. But before we wrap up, I want to switch gears for something a little lighter. A quick fire round to see where your instincts take you. I'm going to throw out to you, a few this or that style questions. The section that we have, we call it is the this or that marketing mashup game. So whenever you're ready, let me know and I'll throw things at you and let's see how it goes.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. SEO or paid ads?
Oh, paid ads.
Webinars or live events?
Yeah, live events.
LinkedIn or Google ads?
LinkedIn.
Case studies or white papers?
White papers.
Global campaigns or localized campaigns?
Vastly depends on what for, but I would probably say localized.
Brand campaigns or lead gen campaigns?
Lead gen. That's probably because that's what I do.
Okay. Creative storytelling or data-driven campaigns?
Oh, God. I really love storytelling because you can kind of get the idea of your brand across to people, but you've got to do things with data. So I'd probably say data-driven.
Okay. And the last one, email marketing or social media?
I'd probably say email because I feel like it's more measurable than social media.
And a final wildcard question that I have for you. If your brand voice had to be represented by a fictional character, someone that totally gets your tone and value, who would it be?
That is a great question. I think based on, so we like to feel like we're intelligent and this is our brand guidelines, by the way, I'm not talking about myself here. So we're intelligent, we're working hard in the background, we're confident but not outspoken. So I think a left field curveball here, maybe, Do you know Q from James Bond?
Yes,
gadget
yes,
guy?
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so I think that
absolutely.
he's not the main character, but the main character couldn't exist without them. I think that's probably a good way to put it, because they're in the background, they're working hard, but they're humble, they're intelligent, smart, but ultimately they provide all the tools available for the main character to succeed. So yeah, I think that's probably where I go.
So I get asked this question back again many a times, and I've, as much as possible, reading the same question answer to mine, and I say Scooby Doo for our brand. So you're out there for adventures, well, having fun at the same time solving them. So yeah, but that's where that pretty much gets us to the end of the segment. Lee, thank you so much for joining us. I think we had a very interesting conversation around what's working. In this marketing B2B enterprise marketing space, how AI is changing the game, and what is that we need to do to stay ready. So once again, thank you so much for joining us on Marketing Growth Fuel, and would love for you to share some parting thoughts.
Yeah, I think the main thing for me is that AI is such an incredible tool that's available to us, but when mixed with automation, it can be such a powerful help in decision making, analysis, workflows, and that kind of thing, that you really are kind of going to fall behind if you don't understand how you can influence problems that already exist or things that you're already doing, and how you can start to plug AI, generative AI and automation within those processes. And yeah, a great place to start is just looking at what's currently happening for you, what current problems you've got, and how you might be able to use AI and automation to solve them.
Once again, thank you so much, Lee, for joining us. Really appreciate this.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe on YouTube, Instagram, or your favorite podcast app. Catch past episodes and more at techdogs.com. See you next time.